Welcome to this week's The Folk podcast. I'm Lonnie Goldsmith, the editor of TC Jewfolk. This week, I'm joined by Angelica Sirotin, a student at the University of Minnesota, an entrepreneur who has started up a number of businesses in the past 2 years since graduating high school. We talk about what motivates her to make her own path, where the passion for this comes from, and what her latest ventures are in this week's Who the Folk podcast. Angelica, welcome to the podcast this week. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
So you were telling me before, you're a full-time student at the U.
I am a full-time student, yep.
What are you studying?
I'm studying applied economics right now.
Okay. And what is applied economics? I just know micro and macro.
Right.
What's applied?
So think about taking that macro, micro, and applying it to real world context. Kind of like, it's not just about reading theories. It's about, how can I analyze financial markets, stuff like that. It's stuff that's always been interesting to me because it's not that, I'm just reading about something, but I can actually see, how is this applicable to the real world?
How did the interest in that field start? Where did that come from?
Yeah, so initially when it came to college, my pursuit was actually computer science, through which I figured out that I was really good at math because I had to take math prerequisites. And then naturally with mathematics comes like economics because there are a bunch of interesting models and stuff like that. So I was like, hey, might as well take a stab at that. And I got really interested in it. And then lo and behold, now I'm full diving into economics and I love it so much.
So one of the other really interesting things about you is that you are an entrepreneur, which at 19, 20 years old, you don't often find people taking on their own businesses that way. And you've started a bunch of things out already.
Yes.
Where did the ideas flow from, for starters? How do you get to that point?
Yeah, so basically just something that I like to introduce myself as whenever anyone asks me is I never say first that I'm an entrepreneur. I say that I'm an opportunist, and it's because of the way I was raised. It's my mentality. I'm a first-generation American of Russian Jewish descent, and my parents came here with nothing, and they instilled with me a motivation for, be grateful for where you are because you can explore things. There are so many opportunities and possibilities around. So I had always been interested since a young age into seeing, this isn't just a market. This is an arbitrage opportunity. Or when I walk into like a Barnes & Noble, I say, there are books, but I can put myself in here and monetize. So my brain is kind of wired differently, and then I'm constantly looking for opportunities to invest myself into the market.
Because opportunist can sort of have a negative connotation.
Sure. I can see that, yeah.
So when people say that, what's their first reaction? Are they sort of taken aback when what does that mean? Well,
usually it's not because, first of all, a lot of people kind of already know like my shtick and what I do and stuff like that. But if it's just a random person who hears, I'm an opportunist, I like to explain in a way that, I'm not afraid to try things because I have nothing to lose, except for maybe I'll make mistakes along the way. But that's how we learn. So unless you really dive into something that you want to invest in and you take your time to see the opportunity, nothing's going to come of it. And eventually you're going to view it as a blunder, not as a learning opportunity.
So what have your startups been? Where have you taken this opportunistic spirit?
Yeah, for sure. So one of the things that I am just inherently intrinsically good at is writing. I have no idea where I caught it from. I love to do it. And I decided, as an opportunist, why not monetize off that? So I decided that, in the upper Midwest, we have a lot of great people in Minnesota with really cool ideas, entrepreneurs, but they don't necessarily know how to articulate their visions and ideas. Mm-hmm. So I decided I can write, why the heck not make a pitch consultancy where I actually help them create pitches, whether it's for investors or for the web copy. And the thing is, in the upper Midwest, we don't have a saturated market. Like if I was in San Francisco right now in Silicon Valley, there are a ton of people doing pitch consulting. So I would just be another little 19-year-old, girl who wouldn't have any, voice in the market. But since there's so few people like me who provide such services in the upper Midwest, that's why I decided to launch a pitch consultancy. And it's for anyone with like a product or service. If you don't know how to, articulate the message, come to me. Think of me as like the middleman between the entrepreneur and Shark Tank. I kind of help piece that bridge together. I like to show that analogy.
So what are some of the interesting pitches that you've helped people refine. Can you talk about those?
Yeah, sure. So one of them that I was working on a long time ago was for this platform called My Questions, and it was a self-improvement platform that essentially said that, so it was like a software service where the person who signed up for it would receive questions on a daily basis, and they would answer them, and they would be able to see their progression and how their emotions were, whatever was going on in their life, so they could do these daily checkups and self-improvement via that way. But the problem was this guy, he was an awesome guy, very smart, but he had, problem like, reaching out to people, knowing how to like articulate the thing. And when you have a good idea and you don't know how to pitch it, you have a disconnect with the audience. So I helped, create an actual video for his website, and it was like a really cute animation and graphics. So not only is it just, when people think pitch, they think room full of investors, talk, super intimidating, but it's not necessarily that. It's also, web copy or like videos and stuff like that. So I help with the video creation process, and it was really cool because at the time I didn't know how to create videos. So it's also a lot of entrepreneurship is learning on the fly and applying that to what you do because it's all through experience. It's completely experiential learning.
Well, that's a really interesting sort of niche that you've found and created for yourself. Why is it that market hasn't sort of taken off here?
Well, one of the reasons is why is because Minnesota is not the kind of tech sector as it is, Silicon Valley, San Francisco traditionally. I think the Twin Cities actually was crowned recently the startup capital of the North, which is pretty cool. So we are gaining some sort of traction. But the reason that I have been able to be successful and in my endeavors with writing and doing this kind of stuff is because there isn't such a massive people here, and it's because probably we don't have the kind of resources that, like I said, Silicon Valley has. We don't have these enormous investor nets and stuff like that. But perhaps if we stick to tech, we do have a lot of Medtronic, a lot of tech medical based
more
companies.
Medical tech, yeah.
Right. So and that's still very, very applicable for where we're heading in the future. But I suppose it depends what field the startups are in. Something like ride delivery service like Uber is not going to fly here if someone's going to create a new Uber or whatever. Maybe it would have proliferate in San Francisco because there's so many different niches and stuff, but ultimately depends upon the environment and, the whole status. Minnesota is kind of not really a Silicon Valley equation. So.
Right. I think people tend to forget, we have a ton of huge companies.
Yes.
A lot of Fortune 500 business here.
One of the largest concentrations Fortune 500s, I believe, in the U.S.
So, it's not like we don't have, it's not like there's not money here. It's not like there's not big companies here. But yeah, it's a very different, it sort of solves a different market than you'd find out west in Silicon Valley or Seattle.
Because also Silicon Valley is very diverse in its market. There's things across the board, mental health startups, there's stuff in food, there's stuff in art, and everything. It's like, somebody vomited out a bunch of ideas and they kind of like fell everywhere. That's kind of what Silicon Valley is. And you're stuck in this goo, but the beauty of it is you can, move around with it and be flexible. Whereas in Minnesota, even though we have all of these giant companies and we have a lot of med tech, it's just, static, like 1, 2, 3 different categories and not a slew of things like Silicon Valley has. So again, it comes down to kind of the environment and also the reputation of the state.
So you have a bunch of other ideas too. How do you, A, sort of keep everything straight in your mind? And B, how do you be a full-time student and a 19-year-old who likes to do things that aren't work too, I would imagine? Where do you find the time to sort of compartmentalize all the ideas and still handle all your other business?
Yeah, well, I am 20 now, so I can say that. I just turned 20 in December.
Happy birthday.
But yeah, so with regards to, organizing everything, I am an organizational freak. And I mean that. I don't have an agenda. I call it an efficiency schedule. And I know people laugh at me for that, but the thing is, the key to accomplishing things in entrepreneurship is really knowing what you do and visualizing it. So when I see the word efficiency schedule, I think, okay, be efficient, be effective. I wake up, I say the same thing. I say, Angelica, work smart, not hard. Don't reinvent the wheel. So when you're constantly reminding yourself of these things, you're constantly thinking in an efficient lens. So that way I'm able to really organize myself and not dilute my talent, but concentrate it. So what does that mean? I don't do everything at once. That's insane. I know I want to. I'm very excited and stuff. So one of my, faults is that, I have so many cool things I want to do, but not enough time to do it. So instead, slow the wheel down a little bit. And instead of, just going at everything at the same time, take some time every single day, maybe an hour or two. So one day I work on my magazine, another day I'm like having a conference call with someone. So that way I can do everything at once, just over a time interval. Now with relation to school, yes, I am a full-time student, so that doesn't mean I'm taking, 17 credits or something like that, plus I'm an entrepreneur. But the thing is, here's the thing. First of all, I love being busy. I'm a busy bee. I hate being bored and doing nothing, so that's also just a personality trait. To be an entrepreneur, it takes a lot of tenacity. You need to want to do something, and if that thing you're doing is something you don't want to do, don't even look at it. It's just like a lot of high school students are like, yeah, I want to be valedictorian. Well, you better really, really work, because if you give it your 99%, you're not going to get there. You got to give it your 110. So unless you're in it to give it your 110 like I am, being a full-time student and entrepreneur is not going to work. But since what I'm doing is what I love to do and not something I see as a chore, I'm able to find time for it. I'm able to efficiently plan my days, my weeks. And so for me, it doesn't really feel like work. After school, I'm like, I'm tired. No, I'm not tired. I'm excited to, work and do stuff. But that being said, obviously there are some downside because, when midterms come up, like right now, I got to focus on the midterms and not so much the entrepreneurship. So it is very much a work, life, and student balance. So I do have three things in the equation. But in the end, the thing that I want to emphasize that if you really, really are passionate about what you're doing, it doesn't seem like work, and it seems like something you want to do. And it's not a want, it's a lifestyle. So you really have to absorb the lifestyle of entrepreneurship. Otherwise, you're just going to regurgitate out crap and not add any value to people's lives. So.
When was your first business that you started?
Yeah, so I recently started like a couple years ago, and the first business was the pitch consultancy, and it's called Alto. And so it's not like I'm getting clients like here and there and everywhere. It's not like Silicon Valley. Right. So another nice thing is like I'm not, constantly doing stuff. It just depends, when I do nail a client, then you really got to concentrate on that. So the nice thing is, even though, I do have a ton of things, if you look on LinkedIn or whatever, there's a lot of stuff listed there. It's not at all like I'm doing everything in 1 week or a day, because it's a process. Any business is a process. Things can be slow. And during those slow times, that's really when you got to, hone in, focus, and figure out what your target is and do a lot of research. A lot of entrepreneurship is the research, not actually, and it's the hustle. It's the hustle, right. I got to say. And the hustle is not, it doesn't stop because you want to gain traction, you want to gain clients, but at the same time, it's not constantly breathing down your neck as in like, oh yeah, I have a client today, tomorrow, whatever. Some people are lucky like that, but, more often than not, it's not like I'm constantly, doing business stuff, because then it would be impossible to be a student. So it's definitely, it's a complete balance between work and life.
So how old were you when you, with the first creation with Alta?
I believe I had just turned 19, or I was like, so I was like around 19. Okay. Yeah.
So all of your startups have all been within the last 16 or so months.
Yep, wow. Exactly. And it's kind of, and why has it been? Because first of all, in high school, I was a crazy high school student. I was that crazy 3.999 GPA crazy person with all this stuff. So I had no time to think about that stuff. I had always inside me, I wanted to, be an entrepreneur. I was very hardworking already, had that spirit, but the only thing that I was focusing on was I got to get into a good college, you know? So, but then, things changed and my mentality kind of changed. Because my initial thing is I really, really want to go to Stanford. That's all I wanted. Okay. I really, really wanted to. And when I didn't, I didn't get in. I felt crushed because 4 years nonstop studying over and over again. What am I going to do? I ended up going to the U, great school. And the thing is, I don't regret it at all, because I am no longer this remote academic drone. I actually think with my brain. I learn for the sake of learning and stuff like that. So it also comes with a change in mentality where I realized, it's just a system. The school's just a system. Work outside of it. Be an entrepreneur. Do something cool. And then I started seeing the opportunities and say, you got to do stuff now. I mean, you're young, but listen, people tell me, oh, you're 20 years old, you're young. In the startup realm, I'm not young.
Really?
There are a lot of startup founders in Silicon Valley who are 19, 18, 21, 22. That's normal, you know? It's actually normal. It's just for us up in the Midwest or elsewhere in the United States, it seems like, oh man, you know, when I was 20, I was, you know, banging my head against a wall or whatever. I wasn't doing entrepreneurship. But the fact is, in this, you know, time span, VCs, for them, age is important. So if I was 30 doing what I'm doing, it wouldn't be as cool and novel as when I'm 20. So youth definitely has its advantage.
So Silicon Valley is the exception, not the rule when it comes to
right. Yeah, exactly.
that thing. And so did you want to go to Stanford because it's a great school or because of its location and its proximity to that world?
Well, I didn't really care about the location. It definitely was in the back of my mind, but it was because, you know, it's a great school and I really, really wanted to go. So that's why. But obviously, you know, when that didn't happen, I didn't, you know, mope around and cry about it. That's not the kind of person I am. I said, you know what? There's a reason for this, and now you have time to think. You know, you're not just rote memorizing things. You have time to think and do things. And then, you know, the whole thing of there's so many possibilities around you proliferated.
So how much does being in Minnesota, where you're not in the mix where there's a huge concentration of people doing startups, you can sort of be a bigger fish in a smaller pond? Is that sort of mindset entered in as you settled in at the U?
Oh, for sure.
Okay.
For sure, definitely, because I would not be gaining the attention that I do here if I was in Silicon Valley unless I had some new, like, she discovers a new gravitational energy, whatever. You know, like, I would have had to be, like, the star of, you know, like, not even a star. I'd have to be a supernova. Like, that's how bright I'd have to be in Silicon Valley. But here, definitely an advantage, for sure. Especially because U of M, University of Minnesota, I mean, they're looking to fund students and stuff. And there's not, like, a ton of student startups that come out of Minnesota, whereas, like, San Francisco, there are a ton.
There's all
so
over.
Definitely an advantage. Mm-hmm.
So what's the next big idea that you have? Do you know what it is yet?
Yes, I do, actually. So
can you say?
I can say. I can divulge some things. So on top of all the crazy things that I'm doing another crazy thing. So I've always been passionate about education and the integration of technology with education. And right now I'm actually co-founding an education technology venture, and it's called Code Pop.
Okay.
And my co-founder, his name is Nick Vimal. And we're both really good friends. We go back way, you know, to childhood, and he's in San Francisco right now, actually, at university. But, you know, I called him up, and, you know, we started talking, and this is both something that we're passionate about. He brought it up, and I was like, yeah, this is a great idea. Let's do it. So what we're focused on is we want to teach kids who are ages 8 to 18 how to code, but our curriculum is completely personalized, meaning that it is completely built around the student's interest. It's not like other kinds of, you know, platforms like people tell me, oh, what about like Code Academy, blah, blah. These are all standardized, modularized programs. They don't actually prepare kids for real world situations because in the real world, you don't have a rubric for like, oh, here, code a game. You know, you're going to have crazy stuff. It's going to be like real world situations that you're being thrown in. You're going to have to work with people,
right.
You know? So the whole approach, it works for some people, but not the majority. The majority of us like it, and the majority of us prefer when we learn something that we're interested in.
Yeah.
But not only that, it's the fact of the matter is the future of the world is going into code. Everything is going to be defined by code. There's, I think, computer science jobs are the #1 source of wages in the United States. 58% of all new jobs are going to be in STEM computing. And then I think it was that college majors who graduate with a degree in computer science earn 40% more on average than any other college major. Yes. And I have the facts to back that up, code.org, I believe. So, I mean, we did a lot of research on this stuff. The world is tending to code. And even if you are not going to be a computer scientist in the future, some aspects of code are going to be in your life, whether it's, you know, oh, maybe some new podcasting software is going to come out and it involves some code. It's just going to be there. And it's just as ridiculous as saying that, 50 years ago, no one's going to have a laptop. Now everybody has laptops. Everybody has phones. We're constantly talking about the Samsung Galaxy S10, Apple, whatever is next. So we really want to equip the next generation for a future that will be defined by code. And we believe that by implementing a personalized approach, we can help them get there, because the approaches right now, we believe, don't solve the problem best, and we're trying to make the most optimal solution available but also affordable. So that's what I'm working on right now.
That's pretty fantastic. So is this something you're looking to sell to schools, school districts, or is this sort of more of a, kid is interested in computers, parents can sign their kid up kind of approach?
It's kind of both. So actually, we were thinking first to, so our target audience is obviously the schools, because they have the kids ages 8 to 18 and it's all about education. And a lot of schools don't have like a solid computer science curriculum, so it would be worthwhile to try and integrate us into their curriculum. But at the same time, we're definitely packaging up as something to sell to parents to say, hey, if your kids are interested, or if you want your kids to learn how to code, we'll sit with you, we'll figure out a way. And something that's unique about us is that before you even start your process of learning code, we have a chance to actually communicate with the parent and the student and ask, what's your child's learning style? So we already in advance know how do they learn, so we can actually fully, completely, customize and tailor the program to their needs, because these online programs, they don't have the ability to say, oh, hey, does your kid maybe have ADHD? Do you, what kind of learner are you? There's no way to, determine that. So by actually, bringing it to the parents, we can see what they want and do the best for their kids possible. And
I would think that would be even easier to do than, obviously, trying to introduce it through school districts makes a lot of sense because they have the captive audience.
Yes, yeah.
But I would think it's harder to customize for a classroom of 30 as opposed to a family of 2 children.
Oh yeah, no, it's a much different scale, obviously, when there's 30 versus 2. It's definitely something that's in the back of our minds. Right now, we're just a baby-faced startup, so we're just launching. So we haven't divulged everything, but I can say that it's really cool because we are the only fully personalized approach for kids to learn code, and we think it's really cool because it all stems from the fact that, like I said, I'm very passionate about education, and I believe that the best way for me to learn is whenever if I had never understood something as a kid, mom and dad would come sit next to me, explain it to me through some crazy examples. My dad's hilarious. He would sometimes use funny things that would interest me as an example, and then I would learn because I was interested, but there was also that person there. Mm-hmm. So it's also the same thing. It's like I want to bring that experience to kids because I care about where our future is headed, because they're going to define it. And if you really want to become this advanced technological society that everyone's dreaming about, then you got to prepare the next generation for exactly that. So that's what we hope to do.
Well, you're thinking huge, and that's pretty cool. I'm very excited to see where this takes off from here.
Oh, thank you.
All right, last couple questions, and we'll let you get back to midterm prep.
Oh, yeah.
Your favorite Jewish food?
Ooh, my favorite Jewish food, probably latkes. My grandma makes the best, and I will fight for it. Yeah.
And you have can typically be a Hanukkah-ish birthday.
Yes, I would be. So that's true. So I am biased, I guess you can.
No, that's all right. Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong there. Applesauce or sour cream?
Ooh, sour cream. Definitely sour cream because I'm Russian, and Russians love sour cream.
I'm not Russian, but I love sour cream.
Good,
too.
Awesome. Welcome to the tribe.
Excellent. And favorite Jewish holiday?
Ooh, favorite Purim. I love Purim.
Okay.
It's right around the corner
Coming
too.
up.
So yeah, for sure.
Dress up, go out.
Yeah, definitely dress up. Okay. I'm not sure what as yet. Maybe I'll dress up as a hamantash and we'll see.
All right.
You
got a little time to figure it out. Well, Angelica Sirotin, thank you so much for joining us this week. We appreciate it, and good luck with everything going forward. We can't wait to see where it goes.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
Thanks again to Angelica for joining us this week. Please subscribe to the podcast. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play. If you haven't yet, please rate and review the show as well. We appreciate the feedback. If you have anyone who you think would be a great guest for the podcast, please email me at editor@tcjufolk.com. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next week.